Hey there, folks. I'm Matt Hansen,
And I'm John Johnson.
and you're listening to
Planes, Trains, and Comic Books.
the podcast where we discuss favorites we've reread, comics we want to read, and everything in between.
And here's the comic we picked this week.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Planes, Trains, and Comic Books. This week we got a weird, fun one for you guys. It is a book called Transmetropolitan, which, I don't know, you never heard of this before, right?
I know I've seen the cover and I've seen the main character several times. When you mentioned, I was like, that sounds familiar. And then, yeah, but other than that, I didn't know what the book was about.
Okay, yeah, like it's one of those things where you've seen the cover around, not even you, just like personally, I mean, it's around because it is like one of those kind of groundbreaking books. There's not really any, I don't even know if it's it's just a weird book, a different book that stands out among its peers. And then the main character is so iconic looking that you're like, okay, yeah, I know that guy. I know I've seen that face before. So, Transmetropolitan, I think it's from 1998. Okay. And that was going to be my guess. But so it's like a late 90s book, and it's written by Warren Ellis. Have you read anything by Warren Ellis? Do you know who that is? Okay. Not that you know of, but
no, I know he's a comic book writer, and because I recognize it from probably some movies I've seen that have been made of his works.
He's of the vein of like Garth Ennis, who wrote Preacher and that kind of stuff. He's in that in that field. I don't know if he's Scottish or Irish or English. I'm not sure. All of them are from the British Isles area, but he's one of those, like, we came from Britain, along with like Neil Gaiman and Alan Moore, and they're kind of the second run of people that came from Britain. So it's like Garth Ennis, you get Warren Ellis. Who else? I don't know. There's just general people that come, like Peter Milligan and stuff, that they came over after like Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman kind of led the way. Grant Morrison kind of in there too, but he was a little earlier than them. So yeah, like his style is very just like all of his books are kind of like, fuck you. Like a lot of them are like that. Some of them are really well written. Like they don't have characters like this, but for the most part, he's generally like a very cynical like writer, and a lot of his characters kind of hold those kind of views. But yeah, so it's Warren Ellis did the writing, and then Derek Robertson did the artwork. Have you read anything with Derek Robertson's art before?
Not that I would know. And I mean, like you said, we were kind of talking about this beforehand, that it's very 90s artwork.
Yeah, like the designs.
The designs, at least, yeah. Like, and it was really nice and really pretty. But yeah, like especially some of the character designs, at least background ones for sure. Yeah, very very 90s.
Yeah, like just their hairstyles and dress and all that. But even their dress, because this is set in the future, so
the 90s. What we thought in the future, what in the 90s we thought the future would be, I should say.
Yeah, and so people have word processors still. They're writing. It's before laptops got popular, and they're writing with word processors still. And somehow it's people are still reading the news regularly.
Yeah, gotta read those columns.
Yeah, so it's a funny future to look at from a 90s point of view, and look back on the 90s and laugh at them and how they didn't know what they were talking about. But yeah, this book is about a journalist. And it's about a journalist fighting, not even this specific book, but just overarching. The journalist is fighting the power of the government. And over the whole kind of series, that's the theme. Like it's about him fighting any kind of power generally, or him at least taking the piss out of power, like laughing at it. And if there's something bigger than that, like if it's a government, he'll fight them and try to take them down. If it's like some asshole, he'll just like punch him or whatever, So he just hates authority in general, I think is the theme of this book. So what'd you think of the opening of this book? It starts off very weird.
Very, very weird. Some hairy man living up in the mountains.
Yeah, it starts on it just shows a cabin in the woods, and there's a man, and he's all hairy and everything. He looks a lot like Alan Moore, which I thought was funny. He's got a big bushy beard and a big all long hair, just covered in hair basically.
Yeah.
Is the place he's living hasn't had much of cleaning or anything like that, and it says he's been up there for 5 years, and he gets a phone call randomly, which I'm surprised he even has service.
I'm surprised he had a phone. I figured
everybody has a regular landline phone too in this, so that's funny. But yeah, he gets called, and he's like, "What the hell? I thought I disconnected this thing or whatever," and then it turns out he's got a publisher, I guess, that he signed a deal with. We're like, hey, we're going to sue you. Where's our fucking books?
You've been up there for a long time. You haven't been working on them books?
Yeah, like, you owe us 2 books. What the fuck? And so basically, he's like, I've been up here for 5 years. I didn't remember that I had your books. They're like, we gave you the money. It's like, that's how he stayed up there for 5 years, was he just took their money and didn't write books and just stayed up there for 5 years. So they're like, well, we're going to sue you. And I guess in the future, maybe that means something worse.
Yeah.
So he's like, kind of, oh shit, I should go back and finish those books.
And they kind of gives you a little insight into him, because they said you've got 2 books, one political and then one whatever you want to write about. And you're
right.
Like, oh, okay, so he's a writer. He's a commentator on things.
Right. And for those of you who've read anything by Hunter S. Thompson, or know who that is as a iconic figure of American history, he is very much basically that guy. Like, he is basically Hunter S. Thompson. This character, he looks a lot like him, very similar. He's got the same personality generally, and he writes very similar too. So he did a good job, I thought, of mimicking the style of like the free form thought of consciousness writing or whatever that Hunter S. Thompson would do sometimes in his books. And so yeah, it was good. But anyway, back to the story. He's like, I have to write these stupid books, which means I have to go back to the city, which means I have to go get a job. And it's weird because this book kind of has different tones, and like sometimes it's super serious and you're like, whoa, that's fucked up. And he's like, yeah, this is fucked up. Everybody should, think this is fucked up, and I'm going to write about it. And then sometimes he pulls a rocket launcher out of his pocket and blows up a bar.
I was going to say, that was like the weirdest thing just starting it. And that was kind of what got me hooked, is like, okay, he's this weird guy. He's kind of like been living in solitude, obviously, and he's crazy a little bit because of his appearance and how he was talking about things. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna go back. And then he's coming down the mountain, and he's like, look at this bar, I've spent time there, and I fucking hate everybody there. And then pulls out a rocket launcher.
And he just pulls out a rocket launcher and just shoots him. So.
And destroys it. I was like, oh, all right then. Like, where's this going?
Yeah, it's weird. And that's where you kind of get like, okay, is this a silly book? Is it a serious book? And it very much is a serious book. But then I think, trying to bring a little levity into it, it's, he does these little silly moments to just kind of, not make it so dark or whatever. And it lets you kind of like the character a little bit more, you get to know his personality.
Yeah.
And well, I was just thinking of the person that drew the book, Derek Robertson. He did The Boys. That's his big thing.
Oh, okay.
That he did the art in. So, for all you who might have watched The Boys on Amazon? Yeah. He did the original art for that comic, which is written by Garth Ennis, Warren Ellis's, kind of co-part. They're not partners, but they're, co-British persons writing. So, they're both very cynical, very similar as far as the way they write. I think, at least. They probably would be like, fuck you if they heard me say that, but they'd probably be like, fuck you anyway, because they're like that. Yeah, so like I said, we get some weird tones in this, but it's kind of just to color the character a little bit, and also be like, this is a comic book, guys. Also, we were talking about serious stuff that you should think about, but also don't think too hard. And so like basically he starts going back to the city, and he's like, I need a job first because I need to have insurance. He says that a lot. He's like, I need to have writer's insurance.
I need this insurance right away.
Yeah, and like if I have a job at like a journalist or at a journal or a newspaper, um, they'll be able to put me up in an apartment and stuff, and then I'll have money to live, and then I can find stories to write books on and stuff. Um, so he goes right away. It's funny. He like drives into the city, and then you see like he hits a toll booth to get into the city, and the guy has like cybernetics kind of in his head or whatever, like he's listening to radio or some shit.
Yeah, but plugged into his head.
Yeah, like into his neck, like
Yeah.
Matrix style. And then he gets into the city, and then there's just a traffic jam. And
Yeah.
so he just gets out of the car and starts walking. He's like, fuck this car.
And he's walking across like the tops of cars.
Yeah, like not even like like the traffic is so tight there's no space in between the cars. So he just walks on top of all the cars. And then this is where you see like he walks through the city, you get a kind of a glimpse at what the city's like. It's super diverse. And by diverse I mean there's every race, every culture, every type of person. There's like alien half people, and there's like, women walking around half naked.
Yep.
And then there's also police all over the place, and they're kind of like talking to people that shouldn't be around and stuff. And
it was and again, very 90s-esque as far as the dress and whatnot. And then even the aliens, to me, they're like X-Files, like
yes.
what you think aliens in the 90s, like little green or gray men with the big oval kind of eyes,
Yeah.
Kind of like a
thin
flat
body, thin face.
Exactly. So that was cool. It was,
Yeah.
it fit the tone of everything.
Yeah. Very much X-Files-ish as far as aliens go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then we see he goes to this place called The Word, which I guess is like the newspaper. And he's like, I got to talk to Royce. I know Royce there. And you know what? He also reminds, if you kind of in your head what his voice would sound like, a little bit like Rick from Rick and Morty. He's got that manic feel about the way he talks.
Yes.
And I think maybe Rick was like the way that he talks and stuff might have been based on
Hunter S.
because Hunter S. Thompson, or maybe even this character a little
yeah.
bit, because Dan Harmon, I'm sure, reads comics and stuff.
Yeah.
So like I could just see him reading this and being like, I want a cynical character like that to be Rick or whatever, so, but for whatever, regardless. So he goes to go to The Word to talk to this guy named Royce. And he's like, you owe me a job, Royce. You want me to write some good stories for you. He's like, where you been? It's been 5 years. Like you came out of nowhere. And then you get like their kind of working relationship and whatnot. And Royce knows he's an asshole, but he's going to do good work. I'm going to be able to sell his work. And the idea of selling good work in journalism nowadays is funny too. So
yeah.
he says like he makes $10,000 or whatever, or like thousands of dollars off of his articles and stuff later on. I'm like, what the fuck is he talking about? He was so wrong about the future of journalism. But so he gives him a job, and he puts him up in like a shitty place.
And this is like, we got a little bit of it, but this is where we find his full name, Spider.
Oh yeah,
Jerusalem.
That's right. We forgot about that.
Because they called him and they said Jerusalem, and that's all we got. And I didn't know if it was a code name or something at first, or was it a surname? A pseudonym for when he's writing. But then he gets there and they're like, Spider Jerusalem, you son of a bitch.
Which is a fantastic fucking name. It's like anybody who's read Snow Crash is like Vitaly Chernobyl, or one of those weird hard sci-fi book names. It's fantastic. I love Spider Jerusalem. So I don't know. I think Neil Stephenson should have written this book.
That is one of the best comic book names I've ever seen.
Yeah, and then he gets put up in an apartment, and it's like a really shitty apartment. And one of the things I like about this is he's got this machine that's in his apartment that can make anything. Like you just say, I want a new suit, and it makes a suit for you, and it does your measurements and shit itself. And he at first he like goes into a shower, and he's like, set flames on full or whatever, and it like just burns all the hair off of him. And then he comes out and he's like perfectly clean.
Yeah, perfectly smooth, head to toe, bald, everything.
Yeah. And so
from being the hairy man.
Yeah, no hair at all. He's got all these tattoos, kind of like tribal tattoos, so 90s style. And then he's got so he goes to get a suit from this machine in his apartment, and the machine gives him a suit, but also gives him these weird glasses because he wants like he says, "Oh, I need like glasses that take photographs and video." So it's kind of like Google Glass ish, and then when they come out, they're like one side of the lens is red and it's circular, and the other side is a rectangle and it's green. And he's like, "What the fuck?" And he's like, and he looks behind the machine. The machine's got like a drug, fused into its back. And he's like, you're on the stuff. You can't take the psychedelic shit when you're making stuff for me." And it's like the machine itself is conscious, which is weird. It like wants to take drugs. It's so odd. I don't know. It's just weird shit like that like, I don't know. In this future world, the machines are sentient, but they also do what we say. It's not like Terminator. But they like want to do drugs to like help pass time and make stuff fun or whatever. And I don't know. It's weird shit like that.
That's something we should say too. When we saw all the people as he was walking through the city, again, lots of 90s-esque clothes and hairstyles and whatnot. But a lot of the people have those like cybernetic kind of things. Like there's some people that had like goggle-y things, like things that like look like headphones, but that were like attached to their head.
Yeah, like infused into their skull or whatever.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was very like Matrix,
cyberpunk.
Like cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Kinda, yeah.
And I don't know. The aesthetic for this book is really well done.
Yeah.
And I wish. I don't know how much Warren Ellis was part of that. I mean, I'm sure he was like, "This is what I'm thinking of," and then Derek Robertson had to imagine all of it and write and draw that shit. So this is probably a really fun book to draw, just because there's so many different things going on. So then so he does that, and then he sees on the TV, which I thought this was great. He's like, TV, like put 125,000 channels on all at once, but they scroll through like every 10 seconds. So every 10 seconds it switches to a different channel, and he's got like 10 TVs all doing this. So he gets all the news all at once, and he can see what's going on. And then like when he hears something interesting, he'll be like, pause, I want to know what's going on with that. And as he's talking to the TV, he sees this guy come on, and it's Fred Christ. Fred Christ, who is from what looks like split down the middle of his body is half alien, half human.
Half David Bowie human, in my opinion.
Yeah, well,
he looks very David Bowie.
He had like the JTT hair.
Yeah,
like and so 90s hair, but he had like just split down the middle. It was weird. Like half of his body is an alien, or at least half is his face, and then the other half is human. And then he's saying like we all us transients are tired of living like third class citizens, and we are gonna secede from this city. We're taking District Angels 8, which is where they all are, and we're like seceding from the Union basically, or whatever. And that's like where the first issue ends, and you're like, what the fuck?
Like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah, and it's like it's just weird because it's such a crazy idea. But Spider is like, oh, Fred, like he knows right away. Oh, he knows Fred, and he's gonna write an article about this. What's going on. And so the second issue starts. He's going to like he's gonna like go see Fred and go to like Angels 8, which is the district that all the transients live. And transients is like transhuman and alien. Like they're basically the humans are like, I don't want to be a human anymore, or I don't feel like I'm human. And so there was a group of aliens that like rented out, I guess, or leased their genetic material to be able to like make people turn into that style of alien. So when we say all the aliens are like that, we're talking about these specific aliens are like the X-Files aliens.
Yeah.
The rest of them might be different in the rest of the book, but in this specific one, these specific aliens that people are transitioning into are, and this is an interesting thought because it's even called transient. It's an interesting thing because trans rights and everything right now.
It's super prevalent.
Yeah, and it's relevant.
Yeah.
Is that what you meant?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Super relevant.
It's super relevant right now. And so like it's interesting that a book 20 years earlier is, we've caught up to it kind of, even though it missed some stuff, it got other things. correct or whatnot. At least as an allusion to, kind of like the X-Men, and was like an allusion to minority rights or gay rights or rights for people of color. A lot of people could read into that later on and be like, oh, the X-Men are talking about me, even though they're Stan Lee's writing about mutants or whatever. So this was kind of like that, where it's trans rights, but it's transient as an alien rights. So he goes over there, and right away, like they've blocked off, they've barricaded the streets, so people can't get in, and it's like shitty block off, like it's like 4 feet high.
Yeah, just like crushed cars and
and there's one guy standing there, and he's like, "Can't come in." He's like, "Get the fuck out of the way!" And he like burns the dude in the eye with a cigarette.
Oh, with his cigarette.
Yeah, and that's where you see, like, does he care about these fucking people or not? Like up until this point, you don't know if he does. You don't know that part of his personality. But later on, you see he's supposed to, like, he writes an article about how how horrible what's happening to them is, but then he doesn't have a problem like burning a guy in the eye or kicking some people in the balls or whatever. And it's just because I think what this guy hates more than anything is people in authority. Regardless of people who think they're in authority too, and especially if they aren't, he'll just kick them or punch them or whatever out of the way. And then the people who actually are in authority, he really hates those people, like the president or the government or whatever.
Yeah.
So he goes, he burns that guy in the eye, and while that guy's freaking out, he like jumps over the barricade. He's walking, he's seeing it's basically like a slum where like these people are all here. There's no anything for them. There's no like housing specifically that they're allowed to or able to be in. Just people walking around homeless. There was a lady he talked to that she had like a baby, and he's like, "Oh my god, like what's going on with you?" And she's like,
"It's like, Fred Christ's baby."
Yeah, she's like, "It's Fred's baby," and he's like, because he was like, "Oh, do you know where Fred is? Can I talk to Fred?" And he's like, "You shouldn't have that baby out here or whatever," because he knows they're about to get like fucked up by the police. Because in his mind, he's like, he says it's a re-election year with a president who's like, he calls him the Beast, which is fun. He calls the president the Beast, and the president is like a law and order president. So there's no way that the president's gonna like stand for this secession.
Yeah.
So he's like, all these people are about to die and they don't know it. So I gotta go talk to Fred Christ. So that's why he's here. And on top of it being like a story anyway. And then so he's talking to her and he's like, "Where's Fred?" And she's like, "He's that way, and tell him this is his baby while you're at it." So right away you kind of get like, Fred's kind of a shitty person. And then he walks up and she points to a bar, and the bar is called Bazooms. And it's a strip bar, and that's where his headquarters is. So you're like, right away you're like, this guy's a fucking dirtbag. And he walks up, and I mean the uniform. These are some uniformed transient people, and the uniforms are in a very Nazi-ish.
Yeah. Specifically, their red bands on their arms with their symbol, and the symbol, well, not a swastika, but it again very symbolizes, it's a happy face, like the standard yellow with the happy face, but it's got 3 eyes.
Yeah, and he just like kicks him in the nuts. He says like they had a gun. Like I read this like 3 times. It said, trying to pull a gun on me, and they didn't have a gun. He kicks him in the nuts, and then magically, the next couple panels, he pulls out a gun. So like, I think he was just saying that to like, either make other people think that it was okay that he was beating him up.
Yeah.
And then he pulls out a gun. It's like, "Where's Fred? I want to talk to Fred." And this is like where the cartooniness also comes in, because once again, it's serious. But then he starts shooting randomly, and people are, it's like cartoony kind of, and people aren't like freaking out that much about it. And they're like, "Fred's over there," and then Fred comes out. He's like, "What's going on?" And he's got like a towel on or whatever, or bed sheet.
Don't you know I need undisturbed sex every 6 hours? I think.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. And so we see like Spider right away is like, "Ah, Fred, you fucker! Like, I knew this was bullshit." So then he gets an interview with Fred. And I guess Fred knew him from back in the day, before he was Transient. And so he's talking to him, and Fred's naive. Fred thinks the government isn't going to attack them. They're just going to, like, yeah, they might quell it, but they want to negotiate or something for more trans rights. And Spider's like, are you fucking serious? Like, you think that's what's gonna happen? All they need is to like cause like an incident to happen that like gives police a reason to come in here, and you're all dead. Like, and that doesn't have to be actually something you guys do. They can make something happen, and then they have a cover story for them coming in and killing all of you. And Fred's like, I don't know about that. And he gives him like, you know, a little interview about kind of like what he thinks about, what Fred thinks about, you know, stuff going on. And then that's pretty much it for the interview. But then he also sees like there's all these ladies. Fred's there to fuck ladies, and Fred gets mad at him because he calls it out. He's like, hey, like, you know, Spider's like, hey, Fred, you know, you just want to fuck people and get famous. Like, you don't actually care about.
Well, and Fred tries to cover too, because I like what he said. He was like, it's different when you're transitioning to the alien, because like you have different desires that you have. You can't eat like human food as much anymore, and
oh yeah,
like, he's going in through all the different things, basically trying to give an excuse for him for being a piece of shit.
Yeah, and you know, Spider's not buying any of it. He's like, maybe that's true, but you're still, you know, an asshole. And like, you got a kid down the block, and you got all these other ladies that you're fucking all the time. You know, you don't really care about what happens to these people. And so then he leaves, and as he's leaving, he sees a guy in a suit. So he's like, fucking lawyers. You can always smell them from like, you know, miles away. And they're talking to someone on a corner. So you don't know what that's for, like the reason for, but that's pretty much how that issue ends. Is like, he comes back. He's like, I know.
One only other thing is he gets his cat. He's walking through the streets, and there's this like 3-eyed, I guess, transient cat, and he's like, hey, you need some help, and the cat like just needs a cigarette. And
well, it's not even like a 3-eyed cat. It's like a 2-faced cat. It's like a cat with with a second face growing out of his face. It's like a weird alien cat. And then later on, the cat's like smoking.
Yeah.
And like knows what people are saying, because he'll be like, Spider would be like, hey, can you, like, where did I put my keys? And the cat's like, like, he's like, oh, thanks. Like, you know, so the cat is somewhat, you know, conscious.
Yeah, because I think at one point he's like, he will tell somebody like, get cigarettes. I smoke these, and my cat smokes these.
So that's pretty much where that ends. I think he tells his boss like, hey.
No, Royce calls him, because that's the reoccurring.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He keeps forgetting to like finish things and what. So they're like
forgetting in quotation marks.
Yeah. So Royce is like, hey, where the hell is that column? It's like, I need it in like, I don't know, 8 hours.
Well, and that's the thing. He's like, he gave him a time limit for everything. He's like, you have, you know, I'm giving you an apartment and all this stuff. You have like 48 hours to give me like a 10,000 word article or whatever. So Royce called him and said, I need, you know, this. And he, you know, he's like, I got a thing with Fred Christ, an interview with Fred Christ. He's like, who gives a shit? That guy gives interviews to everybody. He's like, nah, we'll see if this one had some better, you know, different stuff in it. And then he sees on the TV, like, oh no, firebombs, you know, the transients caused a firebombing. They threw firebombs at police or something. So right there, and then the issue ends right there. So, you know, Spider knows, oh fuck, and he like runs out of his house. And so we see like basically that lawyer that was there before was like paying one of the transients, I guess, to either throw the bomb or set the bomb down, and then now the police have a reason to go crack skulls. And so part 3 starts, or issue 3, and basically the police are just stomping all the fucking transients,
just beating the crap out of them.
Yeah, I mean, the transients don't really have weapons other than fists or, you know, bars and stuff.
Did the police come off as a little Judge Dredd-ish to you, like their outfits?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
I mean, I think there's a reason for that. But yeah, I mean, it's weird because, I mean, British people like Judge Dredd, right? But also Judge Dredd is super, I mean, he's like a cop, right? So, and he's like, I am the law, and a judge, and an executioner, right? So it's kind of like, you don't want that law, right? That's what we don't want in the future. Yeah. But people like him. So they definitely look like that. And and they're just stomping on people's heads. I mean, this is pretty bloody. This is definitely a mature audience comic, and so they're splitting people up, and he's able to run. Spider's able to run past all this stuff and runs back into Bazooms, and he gets in there and he goes to the roof with a couple strippers, and they're all watching it from the roof, and he's like, "Hey Royce, I'm on the roof. I'm inside this riot. Like, I'm gonna send you like my thread of consciousness article right now, live. I'm gonna and he's got his little fucking fat word processor that apparently can go on the internet or Bluetooth or something, and it Bluetooth straight to Royce, and so then
he's like, we're not gonna have time to edit. He's like, doesn't matter. We're doing this.
This is it. It's live. Do you want it or not? And Royce is like, yes. So Royce actually takes it behind Spider's back, and Spider doesn't know this, and he sells 2 hours of like airtime to another network that's just streaming his like written words article. That's stream of consciousness article that's going on right now. So Spider doesn't know, but everything he's typing is on like Times Square, or it's Century Square. That's what it's called. But it's like on all the screens there, and everybody's house, and so everybody's seeing what he's talking about, and he's just typing. I mean, it's basically like I said, reading Hunter S. Thompson novel about the police brutalizing these transient people under the pretense of they started this riot by firebombing someone, and you see like basically Spider just starts. He's such a good writer that he gets everybody on his side that's reading this article. They're like, oh my god, the police are doing that to these people, and there's no photos or anything.
No, it's just
but I could see, it was just
words.
From what I saw, it was just words on this. Now his glasses do take photos, so he did have photos of this stuff going on, but for the most part, I think it was just the writing.
Yeah, everything else everybody was looking at was only the words.
Right. So he's definitely like a really good writer because he convinces people all this is happening in real time right now, and the government can't do anything about it, which I thought was funny too. I'm like, if the government was that hardcore, they could just shut that shit down. Like, there's no such thing as a constitution in a riot or whatever, So, but yeah, so he gets, or he's doing all that, and all of a sudden the cops like stop, and they just start pulling back, and the strippers are like, "Hey, Spider, he's pulled back," or they're leaving. He's like, "What the fuck? No, they're not. Like, there's no way that could happen." And then he looks, he's like, holy shit. And then he gets a call from Royce, and Royce is like, oh my god, Spider, like, it's amazing, like, this is happening, like, you got the police to stop. And Spider's like, what? Like, what? How did that happen? And Royce is like, oh, I sold I sold you 2 hours. I sold this network 2 hours of everything you wrote, and so now you're famous again. And he's like, fuck, I didn't want to be famous. And he's like, and now you're rich. There's a bunch of money. And then all of a sudden you see Spider, who was all angry about being famous and having all this stuff happen to him. And he's like, money? How much money?
How much money are we talking?
And he gets this big fucking smile on his face. I love the like way he draws that grin. And then so he's like walking back after all this, and back to his apartment. And he's like, maybe this is going to be okay or whatever. And then all of a sudden, the cops pull up and beat the ever-living shit out of him.
Yeah.
And they're like, don't fuck, if you ever, get involved with a police matter again, you're fucking dead. And then he I think he got like pictures of them and stuff with his glasses and everything. And then they leave, and he's like happier than ever. He's like, yeah, like basically to him, this means that he's getting under their skin, and he's going to continue, and it's going to be awesome. And he's like ready to fucking take down the beast and the cops and the political machine. So, yeah, and that's how this whole thing ends. It's a really good like cliffhanger. It really makes you want to read the rest of that story.
Oh, they before he left, they announced that they had found Fred's body. I guess they killed Fred in the.
Oh yeah, and he had like a 13-year-old girl.
13-year-old girl, yeah. And I like what Spider said. He said like, "Oh, I've got a good name for this story. Is it Fred Christ, alien love messiah, or sad piece of shit?"
Yeah, I mean,
he had a lot of great one-liners.
Yes, this series is all about one-liners and all about like the magnanimous personality that is Spider Jerusalem. And that glorious name. It's a fantastic name. So, the image that you would have seen if you walked through a comic book store would have been Spider Jerusalem with his shit-eating grin on his face and his glasses of the red and green circle and rectangle. And he's smiling up at you. And that's like in his little suit and everything. That's what you'd see. You know it if you saw it. So yeah, that's this issue. What would you give this one, John?
It was fun, and like you said, it hooked me pretty quick. Being like, oh wow, okay, yeah, where is this going? And yeah, I want to read more. There's a little more in the collection that we had, but they were like one shots. But I did go ahead and just like kind of go through them, and they were fun. We were kind of talking. They felt like kind of weird individual like Rick and Morty episodes, but his personality it's fun. I read a lot of we'll call them blasphemous comics back when I first started reading comics. Like my mom got me like Spider-Man and Batman and stuff, and then as I started branching out, I became friends with you, and you were in you were working at a comic book store. You started showing me all these weird stuff, and I found Battle Pope and Loaded Bible and stuff.
Yeah,
it's fun to see like story like I grew up fairly in a religious family, so seeing like stories like that and then extrapolating them to like just ridiculous levels, is hysterical for me. And then this one is like this guy who's like a journalist, and like he doesn't like religious leaders, anybody in power, political leaders, and just kind of taking them all down and like exposing like the truth of it all. I loved it. I thought it was really fun.
Yeah, and this storyline really like the whole series. I think it's like 66 issues or something long. And through the story arc in between, the one shots and stuff that happen, like it's all about him tearing down the political machine and, taking on different presidential candidates and stuff. So it's really kind of timely if you think about it. Like it's a very timely book right now, specifically, with all the stuff going on in politics and journalism and everything right now, sociological and everything too. So, yeah, so what would you give it?
Going back, I would say I would give this one 8. It was a lot of fun. 8? Yeah, I would 100% keep reading it, reread it. It was great. Definitely, like you said, mature audience. I would, make sure no kiddos pick up the book, but it's a good one. Yeah,
it's good for like a teenager. Like I'd give it to a 15-year-old kid or something, or 16, to be like, you hate authority, right? Like you're a teenager. Here's like a fucked up fun book to read. That's like the perfect age for all that shit. And it's idealistic too, because it's like this is what a journalist should be, kind of thing. Like someone who's hard hitting and is looking for the truth, not the most salacious story, but they know how to write to make it a salacious story or whatever. But there's the truth that's going on behind it, and that's what his moral center is always. I'm exposing authority to truth, kind of thing. Like I'm exposing all these fucking fakes and phonies and hacks and murderers and all that, and like warmongers. I'm exposing them with my amazing ability of the pen is mightier than the sword, kind of thing. So yeah, I would give this one a 7, mainly because while it's, I don't know, like it's good and I liked it a lot, I just feel like, I don't know if it's groundbreaking.
Yeah, I was like, we've had this discussion. Matt's scale is the groundbreaking scale, and John's is like, was it fun?
Yeah, because if I read this in 1998, I'd be like, that was a fun book. I want to keep reading it. But not like, this changed my fucking viewpoint of the world or something, So that's how, Matt's groundbreaking scale and John's it's fun scale. So and both are great. I mean, both are perfect reasons to read a comic book. And I like fun books too. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I read the shit out of, weird adventure stories and stuff just for funsies. So, anyway, on that note, I think we're done. And if you guys got any comments, questions, or suggestions, please email us at Planes, Transient Comic Books, all one word, at gmail.com.
And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We've got our Twitter, our YouTube channel going up now pretty strong. We've got our Instagram as well. So, hit us up on there. Let us know what you think.
See ya.
Bye.
Well, folks, hope you enjoyed that episode.
If you did and you'd like to follow us on social media, our Facebook is Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, and our Instagram is @Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, all one word.
And be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more recommendations to add to your weekly pull list.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.